think we're almost there.
Right. We are live on YouTube. We are live on YouTube. Check Facebook. Let's check all systems. All systems go.
Exactly. All
Houston.
panels, all pieces of technology. Very good.
Christopher, you are live for me. Awesome. I'll let the first. Well, let's let the. Oh, I see Facebook. Awesome. The first batch is trickling in.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's
All right.
go.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Anthony Zrinzak, and I am the new face of the external Ars Amorata organization when it comes to new guys coming on. And I am here with Jordan Luke Collier, a longtime coach of the Ars Amorata, who you will likely have seen via the Search the Alabaster series, the Amorati podcast with Zan, and his latest presence on social media and probably in your emails as well. He's going to be answering tonight some questions about his latest passion project, a new cinema mastery course exploring themes of communication and masculine edge. I'll start looking at any questions coming in. So, guys on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or the Zoom stream, just drop your questions in the chat, and I'll ask Jordan to answer them as they come in.
Great.
Christopher, any questions for Jordan? I see you are with us on Zoom.
Can I say a few words to introduce this
Oh,
before we go
by
into
all means,
questions?
Jordan.
All right. Thank you for your introduction, Anthony, and thank you for joining me. I'd like everyone watching to remember this face or remember Anthony's face. Um, you came along actually a couple of years ago. You joined a webinar about initiation and travel that I ran, and you've been on the scene for about 4 months since the last conference. And your story is a bit like mine. It's a case of right person, right place, right time, right motivation. And Anthony's part of our team. So if you have questions about, okay, I'm interested in this, Ars Amorata, where do I start? Where do I go? You can speak to Anthony and he will listen to where you are and give you his best direction and recommendation. Tonight, we're both in Bucharest. It's the post-conference high or flow or drowsiness. I might be a little liberal with my speech because we've been speaking all day and listening, and there's been a lot of people coming in and out. And yeah, it's a phenomenal feeling actually to be in the room. I think we're probably 60 or so men, a handful of extraordinary women with us, and communing and sitting in some of these gripping themes. And one of the qualities definitely in our group is it's as the years go by, it's less and less a personal development group for men, which it has been in the past, self-help dating coaching for men. And it seems to be more a sense of the men in the room are strong. They've seen things, they've experienced things. They want to gather together for a message, a rest, a reinvigoration. And I think one of the things about being a little bit deep as a man, reflective, curious, wanting to see life from a different perspective, is that it can be harder to find the others that spark you up and make you come alive. And it's so nice to be in this conference actually to see all these men with really yearning for meaningful questions, um, yearning for knowledge, and to come together in the room, it creates a really, really extraordinary energy. So I've been thriving off that. Um, Tonight we're going to switch up the theme a little bit because I've been talking, particularly for those of you who join me for the movie night, we have been talking recently on the newsletter a lot about subcommunication. And I recommended that you watch a film which was called Sanctuary. It's only a couple of years old. And Sanctuary is a interesting film because you've just got one male actor and one female actor, and they're locked in a hotel suite for a night. And that's it. So it's a pretty cool piece of screenwriting that they can produce a 90-minute drama with so many twists and turns to it. And in the film Sanctuary, we discuss themes around dominance and submission, psychological dominance, the psychological desire to please, projecting on women your mother and needing from her her validation and approval in order for you to feel okay and safe. This affects many men. We also explored what it means actually to grow in confidence and grow through intimacy and having conflict and taking a stand for yourself, but also valuing a woman and what she brings to your life. A lot of men typically don't see the value of the feminine until far too late, when she's gone or when she's on her way out. And if we look really closely, the energy that a woman brings us can be absolutely transformative for the better. It can be transformative, destructive for the worse, depending on many things, which we might get into. But that film was a live wire of different topics. And if you missed it, we've got a film night. So every now and then, and of course in the movie course, we run a film night where everyone who watched the film comes together on a Zoom call. We have good 30 minutes in breakout rooms where everyone discusses their impressions of the film. Everyone has different impressions of Sanctuary. Those shares were really, really rich. And then we came back into the main Zoom room and I talked you through it. This is what I see. This is, pause the movie here. In this frame, you start to see that there's a shift in the dynamic. You can see a shift in the motivation in one of the characters. And they say this one thing that stops the pattern of communication and leads the communication in a new direction. Do you see it? And then did you see how the other character in this film tightened up or constricted their breath or froze somehow or melted or came into a sense of flow or increased openness or availability? Did you see the minute second to second fluctuations in the embodiment of each character? So these are some of the levels that we were speaking at, and it's like putting subcommunication under the microscope.
Jordan, we have a question. If you're ready for the first one.
Sure, why not?
It's about the saboteur, the infamous saboteur. Um, Techniques for grounding and presence when you see a real beauty who you want to approach. Uh, and can you do something before the saboteur takes control? Or is there a practice that we can do to prevent the saboteur from taking control? To
I
alleviate it?
don't I don't personally think very much about the saboteur as if it sounds like such a big thing if you call it the saboteur. I have a bit more of a broken down approach to it. Some of you might know the system called internal family systems. They call it parts work. And the idea is that we don't just have one inner critic or one saboteur, but we have a number of different voices trying to do a number of different things for us. So first of all, if you think you are being pulled back by the saboteur, I'd encourage you to develop and refine your understanding of what the saboteur actually is and how these voices are trying to help you. But it's not my biggest topic of interest, actually. And the reason I'm interested, particularly in film and in subcommunication, which we're talking about here, is that when I become very interested in the communication I perceive, the subtle communication that I perceive that's going on in the room around me, all of a sudden my attention goes out I don't have so much attention to keep within myself and stay wrapped up within myself. So constant conversation between you and the saboteur is a conversation that happens somewhere in here with somewhere else in here, or somewhere in here with somewhere down here in the body. But a conversation that is about subcommunication between you and somebody else is the focus of your meditation is out into the real world. So say you're hunting, say you're an animal hunting in the savannah, or say you yourself are hunting. In order to make sure that your bullet hits the target, your attention has to be so precisely fixed on the target. And I think the reason why I have family members that did archery, that won a lot of medals and trophies. Beautiful thing, the whole Robin Hood archetype. They would go in the green sweater, down to the archery club. And the beauty of archery is when your focus is so pointed like that, you don't have any more time for self-reflective thoughts, which is the saboteur. The saboteur, to be cruel, I could be very compassionate about the saboteur, but to say it more cruelly, it's absolute self-absorption, which cuts you off from the world and places you into a deep sense of separation. So if I'm to practice subcommunication, one thing you can do is go to any social place and sit in the middle of it and bring your attention outwards and become studious of the body language, the energy exchange between people that you see. One thing that I'm curious about is body constriction. How is a person constricting their body or shaping themselves to project an image? And what is the truth of their energy flow beneath that image? In a lot of people, there's a mismatch. The guy who puffs out his chest and wants to be all alpha, but he runs out of energy after 30 minutes to do this, and you start to see him collapse. That's very interesting to observe. And my sense is, aspects of the saboteur never go away completely, but by putting my attention on other things, the importance of the saboteur is so much less. And to tie it in, why I like working with film is because if you watch a movie for 2 hours and you get wrapped up in a great narrative and the visuals are stunning, yeah, maybe there's an actress that you like in it and the music is absorbing, the story is good, you forget yourself entirely. I don't know people that go to the cinema and then think about themselves, think about their worthiness or their deserving during the film. You get wrapped up in that outer thing. So women over the years have been a meditation for me. I don't think about myself when I'm actually connected with another person.
Is there a scene from a film, Jordan, that comes to mind that sort of describes this real stillness and precision when it comes to an approach, when it comes to a woman and seeing her beauty?
Stillness and precision. Yeah, there are many. The first one that comes to mind comes from a film called Shame, which I want to run a movie night on. I think that's going to be the next Amorata movie night. Shame is awesome because on the one level, you're following a man around who has perfected seduction and the art of the one night stand. So you get to see how he does it. It's very interesting. And one of the scenes, he's in a bar. His co-worker is like this chatty, charming, this is in New York, New York kind of guy, full of words, banter, playing with the girls, trying to make them dance. And the hero or the anti-hero of the film is sitting back at the bar and he's in absolute stillness and just watching his buddy move too much as a way to impress this woman. And then the woman is just smiling through gritted teeth. And then her gaze keeps going back to the more still, calm man at the bar. And after the dancing monkey man has kind of worn himself out through all his antics, the protagonist of the film goes outside and she basically follows him. She runs into him on the street and invites him into her car and they go home together. So he's a really good example. The thing with seduction movies or seducer movies is that the protagonists are usually devastating ladies' men, right? So they show us how to do it in the context of a one night stand. But what you tend to see later on in the great seducer movies is that these guys' lives are all total disasters. So that film, and you see that his incredible seductive repertoire is built on top of a sex addiction, which he has to fuel because otherwise the angst that he experiences on the inside is too much. It's like some of our guys fetishize the scene with Javier Bardem and Vicky Cristina Barcelona. He walks over to the table. He doesn't just approach these two women and invite them to Oviedo in his plane. Christina's been throwing him eyes for the whole evening. And he reads that and he's like, wow, this blonde American girl, she's interested in me. The eyes are unmistakable. I'm just going to walk up and go over to her as a response to her eye contact. He doesn't just do it to be plucky or to try something. His approach is actually measured in complete proportion to her invitation. So the subcommunication there is beautiful. Now, the problem with the Javier Bardem character and Vicky Cristina Barcelona is at the end of the film, he's such an internal chaos that he loses all three of the women. And we forget that because we just watched that one 6-minute scene. I hope this answers your question, then probably dumps a whole bunch of stuff more on top.
Yeah, guys. So the live stream, we're taking questions for Jordan Luke Collier, talking about his latest movie mastery course, which explores the themes of communication and masculine edge, two of the most elusive themes of all of the Ars Amorata sort of journey and the land of women, the art of love. Taking questions from the Zoom call, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Sort of a general question, Jordan. If you could speak a bit more to how movie work helps guys who are just seeking for uh, uh, success when it comes to casual dating, going out.
Hmm. So that part of the journey, it's useful to have a frame of reference for how things can be done. I like films where there is where you have, let's say, a couple of best friends, and you see the split between the two of them. Usually, two best friends in a film represent different parts of the psyche, right? So you have one who's more bold and playful and cocky, and you have another one who's a bit more reserved and passive and maybe kind. And you get to watch how their fate works against each other. I watched Swingers the other day, which a lot of people know and love. It's an early Vince Vaughn film, right? And he's got this thing, it's your money, baby, your money. And his best friend is um, just broken up with his girlfriend, is feeling incredibly needy, and the Vince Vaughn character is trying to reintroduce him to his mojo and his flow. A lot of these characters serve as a frame of reference, and I think it's worth taking them seriously. So when I was young, growing up in England, I used to watch films of suave seducer guys and think that's something so completely foreign to me. I will never do that. Like, oh, maybe in Los Angeles, guys show up with this much swagger and boldness, or maybe in Italy or Brazil or something like that. But not me, not where I'm from. So there was a way that I othered characters in cinema. That's not me. Their personality traits, their archetypal traits are not me. And the road to discovery is recognizing all the ways that these characters are me and can be me. And it didn't take very long at all before I found myself showing up in ways that were, as crazy as anything I've seen in film, with the right encouragement, with the right coaching. But to have these frames of reference are very interesting. So I can see where I am, where do I fit on the map, who's inspiring to me. It's really nice to have an image, right? And a lot of us as men growing up, maybe we don't have strong male role model images in our communities. We see our dad, he's a workaholic, or he's not there, or he's definitely not in his body with swagger. Is there a guy in your local community who's like that? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it's great to have almost a pantheon. Archetypally, I think of it as a pantheon of kind of heroes that we know, that we can relate to, that we can draw something from, and use that to inspire the imagination. Because the thing with movies is they've all been written by somebody. So there's no scene in a film that is more wacky or outlandish than things that happen in reality. And every screenwriter that ever tried to portray a protagonist who was an incredible seducer type, you speak to that screenwriter, they're like, there's no way I did justice to this man that I know. I was trying to capture his spirit, and my own protagonist falls flat. So even in the most outlandish characters that you see on film, they're still not as wild as the real human life that they're trying to convey.
Follow up on that. I've seen a few questions now asking about seduction, not as a technique, but as a way of life. To be a
Mhm.
seducer in life, right? Perhaps you could say to make love to life. Um, does this project of yours touch on that at all?
To be a seducer of life. I personally, the identity of being a seducer is not something that resonates with me or that I aspire to be a seducer. It's nice that I feel open and flexible in sensual or sexual communication. And I'm very fascinated by the ways that I am seduced. So I think it's
Or I'll
Robert
just
Greene who
qualify
says,
that question for you because the asker seems to see seduction as more of of the way that this weekend at the conference we talked about it in terms of a pureness, a beauty in the seduction. They also use the word connection as a synonym. So we don't mean seduction so much in the sort of negative connotation sense that you mentioned. A lot of films portray it in almost a tragic way. It's more of a pure kind of um, you know love
that's what
making
I'm,
for the world. Okay,
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I
great,
don't see
great.
myself as wanting to be a seducer or trying to be a seducer, but I do recognize that seduction is a thing that happens. And that can be really wonderful, but it can also be really painful if I fall in love and I collapse. So one thing about seduction is I think is important to learn the ways that you are seduced is perhaps more important than understanding how to seduce another person. Because then when you are seduced, you don't collapse into an inferior version of yourself. You can actually remain in your power, remain open, and feel like you're falling in love and own that. Um, the whole essence of the movie course and why I want to help men understand a deeper cut of what intimacy and attraction are through film is that when we read endless self-development materials, we really risk staying in our heads and turning our private lives into an ongoing project. And so to say, you know what, I'm not going to read this latest how I can fix my inner emotions and be okay book, but I'm going to sit down and watch a movie and allow the music and the poetry and the imagery of the movie to go into me, and I'm going to give myself an aesthetic treat. I'm going to treat myself to beauty. That's already choosing seduction or choosing life as beauty, right? What's better to spend 2 hours taking a really dense inventory of your psyche and doing, I don't know, 2 hours of affirmations in the mirror, let's say, or homework, or spending 2 hours watching something really beautiful. I mean, this is to surround yourself by beauty, which is to participate in the seduction of life, to participate in sensuality. And then we pick up the discussion. Okay, how did that movie touch you? What did you feel? How did it trigger you? How did it relate to you?
This one should be well, maybe not easy, but hopefully a short one. What is there one film that portrays the Amorati sphere specifically really well?
Depends what kind of Amorata you are.
Mm.
That sounds facetious, but we've got many different people in the group. Um, One of these films I will keep a secret because it's in the movie course, which I think nails the Amorati journey that I've been on. But there is a movie that's not in the course, which I would say is La Dolce Vita, which is a 1960 black and white Federico Fellini. So this is set in Rome, and you follow around Marcello, and Marcello is a paparazzi. And at the beginning of the film, this Swedish actress comes out of the aeroplane. She's all boobs and butt and shiny things and diamonds and this big blonde hair. And he chases her around. They end up almost kissing in the Trevi Fountain. It's one of the most famous images in cinema. And the film's great. You watch Marcello over the course of a week kind of degenerate from his own chasing of the illusion of beauty until his life turns into hedonism and meaninglessness. And he has a friend actually who is a philosopher who offers him a possibility of salvation. So you have this kind of one arc. I'm probably going a bit deeper than you asked me to, Anthony, but in this film, you have this one arc where you watch Marcello get caught up more and more in the illusion and the chasing of beauty and the hedonism and the bohemian life until he kind of crashes. But then you have this possibility arc, which is, part of you, Marcello, wants to write a book. You want to create something deep. You want to create a gift to humankind. And you need for yourself the inspiration and the culture and the time away so you can meditate on your depth and create something beautiful for the world. So watching these two lines interact is amazing because a lot of our Amorati, it's like the desire and the compulsion to go out and live is so strong that it can become consuming. But after a while, you take stock and you think, well, actually, all the things that I experienced in my life fill me with a sense of fire and meaning. Now I want to produce something to give it to the world. Am I going to be able to do that or not? Or am I going to end up in some kind of existential abyss? So all of these themes are in La Dolce Vita, and it's fun. Like Fellini films from the early 60s are the most fun films you can imagine.
I know, Jordan, you have done a lot of work with archetypes. Um, and what advice would you give to someone who's looking to film for inspiration, perhaps for an archetype, um, in terms of embodying characteristics without just copying?
So how I'm
Right?
wondering
I
who's
think I think a
asking these
lot.
questions. They're quite interesting. So you're
I,
asking, yeah, go
well, I think
ahead.
a lot of guys tend to. It's easier to copy someone you see on screen than it is to actually take what's true for you and become someone who's integrated, right? Who's authentic, who's true to themselves. Do you have any advice for someone who is looking for inspiration but wants to move forward in an authentic way and not just copy what they see on screen?
Yeah,
And
for
what are the
sure.
pitfalls of copying what you see on screen versus integrating it into who you are?
So
The two-part
there is
question.
a way. It takes some digging and some work. So you got to have some real curiosity and commitment to this if you want to do this properly. Now, I've worked since the beginning of the year. I've had two or three actors in my coaching groups, which has been really interesting to hear how they've trained and what is the cutting edge in the acting world and how that is actually so close to what I'm teaching in embodiment. I didn't know anything about the acting craft. Um, but acting is not something where there has been in the past performative acting where you stand up, like a Shakespearean character and you really perform and you this really abnormal representation of these old stories. But all modern acting is dropping into the part of yourself that is the same resonance of this character. So you align who you are authentically with what is authentic in this character in the text. So to answer your question more specifically, I see the human psyche and the human being as having four different depths. So the most shallow depth is the depth of the ego and the mask and the shell and the pretense and the persona that we show to the world. It's like the solid exterior of the person that keeps us together. Most people are like that. Most of us, most of the time, are walking around the world in the ego constructed shell that we put on to try and keep us safe. And usually at some point you'll choose, I want to have this identity. I want to shape myself into this kind of person. I want to look like a rock musician guy, or I want to look like the archetypal surfer. So we shape ourselves into that look. So you could watch a movie. I don't know, let's take James Bond as a really obvious example. I want to be more like James Bond. And so you build a new shelling that is more like James Bond. You wear a tux, you have all these little tools, tiny little cell phone or whatever it is. You get this car, you sit there and order martinis shaken and not stirred, and you have this kind of cool, aloof thing with a little bit of sexual swagger in the things that you say. So you can replace, I don't know, say you were a surfer guy who used to play guitar at the beach, and now you come home and you're this Renaissance man, international James Bond guy. So you just swap one shelling for the next shelling. And after you're done with that shelling, you take on another shelling, which is you create another persona and you become that. So the pitfall of doing this is you can spend your whole life just swapping one shell for another shell for another shell. And that doesn't mean that people are actually going to get to know what's beneath. Least of all you. You just changing your outer shell depending on the fashion and depending on what you think is going to get what you want in the society in which you live. Okay, now I'm going to leave behind the international playboy thing. I'm going to look like a responsible banker or lawyer type and wear the shell of the suit and the big, white smile and here's my business card. Because money and stability is more important to me now, so I'm going to project that shell ad infinitum. So yeah, it's probably good for your Instagram to replace your shell with another shell. But what the actors I'm working with are doing, and what I suggest you actually do, is you understand the shell that has you. You, Anthony, you have a shape. You have learned to become somebody so you can have more of the things that you want in the world and experience less of the pain. So your exploration in my eyes would look like, how are you actually wearing a bit of a shell, and how is your persona stuck, and how small is your range of expression? How limited are you in how you can show up in the world? Once you start to identify your current shell, you can start to let it go and become more soft, more chaotic, more unpredictable. You get to know the primal nature of the animal that is you. Anthony is just a name you were given. You have no name. You are this primal mass of hair and mucus and muscle tone and hormones and biology and capillaries and veins that constrict and let all kinds of things go through them. You are a throbbing, heaving heap of animal kind, right? So the more you get to know that, the more you realize, wow, my potential is way more vast than just being Anthony, who's, I don't know, let's say well educated in a Canadian college or something like that. I know you're more than just that, but as an example, now the palette is really, really vast. You want to be someone vulnerable? Well, you can get to know your vulnerability. You want to be powerful and angry, you get to know the ways that you roar and react, and you can speak out unrestrained. So we can discover all this in a coaching therapeutic way, but this is what actors are doing daily, deconstructing their limited shell so they can be more of this wild, processed beast that they are. And then if you say, now I want to explore and make myself into the lover archetype, you look within your authentic felt experience. What are the parts of me that are essential? How do I feel love? How do I feel erotic energy move through me? How is that? And therefore, how can I expand that, maximize that, give that shape, give that texture, give that form? And you can start to create a character out of that or an archetype in your own life. So if you want to put on a shell and say, you know what, I am going to play in the next rendition of Don Juan de Marco, I'm going to play Don Juan. Yeah, Johnny Depp did well in that role, but now I'm going to take that role. I look different, but I can tap into my own form of the lover. And I know what the lover is because I felt lover energies and lover impulses from within my animal body. You see how this is so different from going from, well, girls didn't like me at school, and now I'm going to put on a mask of Don Juan. By doing this deep inner exploration, knowing my whole feeling body, when I present myself as Don Juan, I'm vibrant. My eyes are vibrating with the spirit of love, of desire, of intense curiosity. And a person who perfects a shell doesn't have that deeper vibration.
And I read your question verbatim because I think the way it's written is really striking. Um, well, first of all, I'd ask you to speak more to one of the core themes of your project, this course of communication. But the quote is, in the modern world, both men and women seem to be screaming in silence, not knowing how to send or read the signals and how to start learning them.
Mm. And so the question?
Well, the question is, well, maybe you could talk to how the course, a bit further, how the course can help someone perceive and tune in to the communication, which is happening all around us all the time, and really is one of the key parts of being someone who masters, any craft in life, not only women, but any sort of large pursuit that they have. That's a huge part of it.
Mm. I could bring a little bit of polarity into this. So if you're interested to play with the erotic polarity, the masculine and the feminine edges, then your route to working with this would be a little bit different. So I'm also struck by those words, screaming in silence, to be seen, to be noticed. So on the masculine side of the spectrum, which is probably most of us tuned in, the practice is to learn how to see and to witness. So if you are to see a woman who is screaming in silence to be seen and to be felt, to be known, to be related to, how are you going to notice that? My sense is that somebody screaming in silence does not do that invisibly. That's such an enormous metaphor. There is so much energy to screaming in silence. So I might see somebody who looks well put together, who's, trying to control their posture and not give too much away. We're taught not to be vulnerable, especially not if we're screaming in silence. That just sounds horrifically needy. So people will try and hide that. But can I see underneath the constriction and the mask and feel when someone is screaming in silence? That's the service that we have to give. If you as a man want to give yourself as a lover into the world, you have to be able to read when that is a truth for a person. On the feminine side, because this is really interesting for us all to understand, and this is also something we can practice as men. On the feminine side, if you are screaming in silence and nobody is hearing you and nobody is seeing you, or your silent screams are so muffled and so under wraps and withheld that no one is going to notice. So if you're very defended against anyone seeing your silent screams, but your silent screams are wanting to be seen, you're keeping yourself in a sense of prison. So the practice on the feminine side is, can you breathe and move in a way that loosens the the, the facades, the gates, the walling off to defreeze and actually feel that grief, that agony of disconnect, that yearning? Can you allow yearning, exhaustion, the exhaustion of men and women and this whole conversation to be seen? And are you willing to take a few breaths and allow your heart to become more vulnerable in a public place? My take is that when women do this, they relax their muscles in their face and allow their emotions to be seen. It's the most compelling thing in the world. What is a beautiful woman? It's not a woman whose face is symmetrical and fits some kind of objective standard in beauty. For me, it's a woman who can transmit through her body and her energy a rich array of emotion and feeling. And then I watch her, I'm like, wow, there's so much to see here. She's screaming in silence. So we help each other. A woman's practice is to reveal more of what is the feeling truth moving through her. And the masculine practice is to learn how to perceive this. Even though she's wearing a social mask and trying not to be seen in her yearning, can you see? No, that's just a facade. I recognize that. There is a signature of an energy of screaming in silence or of yearning, and I notice it beneath. And then whatever she kicks back in your face, oh no, I'm not interested in men and dating these days is you hear all the defenses and it's like, yeah, but I can actually feel a deeper layer of you. So
And
this is the real subcommunication. A lot of guys are like, oh yeah, if she twiddles her hair or she wears black nail varnish, these are the signs that she's, you know, available this evening. No, I'm talking about a deeper reading and sensing into other people, which I think is the basis of the real subcommunication.
Jordan, there are a few questions from the Zoom live stream, asking about sort of the mechanics again of cinema work and how watching a film can ultimately translate to changes in your behavior in real life in the bar, on dates. Um, as a student of the course, I was really impressed by your sort of uh, pre-movie ritual that you teach us and walk us through how to prime yourself to watch a film to get maximum value from what you see on the screen. Um, could you talk to the crowd briefly of how you walk students through the way to be present through a film so that you can embody those aspects? And then maybe a bit about how after the film on the course you present a bunch of valuable questions and even more value via calls and whatnot
Yeah.
to sort of solidify those learnings seen in the film.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down because in my perspective, I see how watching a movie can be really transformative. But then from a general public perspective, it's like I've been watching movies all my life. I didn't transform at all. Like, how the hell is this going to make a difference now? So yeah, there are many things that we can do throughout this. And so before watching a movie, it's worth setting your intention so that you bring to the film a particular form of presence and openness. And this doesn't mean that I do this all the time. I don't sit in front of every movie and meditate and, focus on one point in the middle of the screen. It's only when I know that this film has got something for me. Like I sense that the film has got a message for me, or I hear there's a recommendation. This film's amazing. It's going to relate to you. It's high grade artistic work. So I'm not talking about genre movies, the latest sci-fi thing. I'm talking about real artistic works that are looking to demonstrate something true about the human condition. So I'm only talking about specific kinds of films that resonate with a high degree of beauty and truth from the beginning. When I know that I've got a film that has something for me, I will turn out the lights. I will clearly turn off my phone and put things like computer away and just enjoy the opening credits, turn up the music, make sure, lock the doors, make sure no one's going to come in my way for the next couple of hours. And, if I'm really intent, I might take a few breaths and really sit up. I was teaching this in the course. Like, what you want to do as much as possible is notice when there are thoughts come up that try and scrutinize what you see on screen and let them go. So you can sit with your direct sensate experience. So if you watch a film with a rapt attention, there will be things firing off in your neurology, in your body. Hairs might stand on end. Fluctuations might happen in the heart. You might feel a kick or a grief in the guts. So if you watch with more curiosity about your embodied reaction, all of a sudden you start entering into a deeper relationship with the film. And that's the starting place. So I recommended that all the students of the movie masterclass do that because I knew that I was showing them films that were rich in content from beginning to end, that were going to be a festival for the senses, and they weren't slow burners. They weren't going to let you down. They were all intense films. Uh, Typically, if I watch a film that might be 2 or 3 hours long, I might be casual in the beginning, just chilling out. But a good film will rope me in. And I'll notice that if a film is really good, the last 15, 20 minutes, I'm sat up straight almost in a meditation posture anyway, because it's the quality of being on the edge of your seat. So to some degree, what the artist has to do is reach in and grab you and pull you forth. But as I don't know, an art mystic or a film yogi or something, you can sit prepared. Okay, I know this movie is going to be 2 hours long, and I'm ready to enter into this with my full senses. Yeah.
Absolutely. As someone who's meditated done sort of traditional meditation in silence. Um, Watching a film meditatively was really a welcome change because uh, I guess as we spoke this weekend at the conference, beauty needs to be witnessed, and it exists in reality. It exists all around us, including in film. And so, um, all that to say that watching a film with these sort of questions in mind can really be transformative. You know, those 2 to 3 hours sitting on the sofa, just gazing into the screen, can do a lot if you are given the right guidance.
There's
Um,
there's two important things. Like, how does a film transform you? One is through direct experience. So say I open and relax everything, and I'm in a state of real receptivity. Meditation is a real receptivity. I'm a yes, I'm accepting of anything that hits my senses right now in that open space. One image of a film can sear itself into the mind and into the body. And there are probably images. I mean, I don't know if you're posting this, but there's an image of somebody peering through a certain door that I saw you use for something the other day. And you're like, this is probably the image of the entire movie course for me. It tells me so much, right? This kind of voyeur guy is looking through a secret door. Um, that image will stay with you for the rest of your life. I don't know what it means to you. It probably has thousands of possible associations. But all it takes is an image. And a good film might have 7 or 8 different images and they burn into the psyche and you'll never forget it. And I wake up, sometimes I think about films for a few days and I dream about the films that I just watch. And I wake up in the morning and I'm like, that content is within me, working me, rattling around inside. And it can subtly shift the direction that I take in many different things. So without me having to do anything, I'm informed by new things that I've seen. So that's like a direct aesthetic response to art. The other thing is through using the mind a lot more. So at the end of every film, I give a big list of reflection questions, which is a form of coaching exercise. You read through these questions, and the questions invite you to look at the film you've just watched in different angles. Did you catch this? What do you make sense of that? So at this point, after you have your first impression of the art, you go through the reflection questions, and it's like, oh yeah, now I see in more detail how the different things that happen relate more thoroughly to my own life. And yeah, the members of the course that did these really deeply said, wow, it was the reflection questions that really made everything come alive. Because I just see how much of myself was playing out in that film. And you've made me think old memories over, reinterpret the things that I've done in the past, which has brought up more feelings. It's been painful, sometimes awkward to tackle some of these questions, but it gives me the resolve to do something different in the future and the clarity to know what to do different in the future as well.
so here's a specific example that someone's going through. Um,
Right.
um, is it advisable to take a move if you have a crush after a very long time, even though there are no signals coming anymore? Could this be a cathartic experience, or is it simply just simping and begging? And how might someone seeing a film, or is there a film in the movie that kind of projects away some guidance on how to handle this sort of uh, what is the word limerence that you used in one of the films, Jordan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I all I've got is the small question that you've typed in, which tells me many things, but is not the whole story. So I'm going to give you the broadest answer I can based on what I've heard. Typically, and I've been here, if I'm in love or attracted to a woman over a long period of time and I receive no signals from her, typically what's going on is a limerent obsession, which is not that I'm in love, but I've used the image of this girl to play out an internal love story. It's not reciprocated, otherwise she would have shown interest and so on. And the fact that it's gone on a long time, it's a limerence. So typically, from everything I've heard and explored and experienced myself, a limerent obsession will never turn into a real relationship. Highly, highly, highly rare and unlikely because it's your projection. She doesn't have those feelings in return. So you can go and say something if it's going to kill it off for you. Um, but I think that's all it's going to be. You executing on, how do I say, firing off this energy that you've been storing from within you. You know, trying to find a way just to blast that out of the system and shoot it off into the world. It's nothing about her, therefore it's not particularly seductive. It's not tailor-made for her. It's you going to discharge some kind of truth that you've been holding on to. So the other possibility is that you speak the truth to her and she's like, no, I'm not interested. And then you continue having this limerent obsession. You continue thinking that you're in love with a woman who is not giving you any signals, and that can continue. Oh, what if I said it in this way? What if I changed the way I said, God, I hate myself. I should have said it in the other way. I forgot to tell her this. Now I'm going to send her the other text message and add the thing that I forgot to say. Before you know it, you're in this deep self-absorbed loop of regret and trying again, or what if I did this in another way? And it's not moving on with your life. So really what you want to do is tackle the tendency to obsess over unavailable women. And yeah, we cover this very deeply in the course because a number of us go through this, and I've got a phenomenal movie and a phenomenal little coaching package of reflection that tackles this in a very shocking and head-on way. We had someone go through the course and he said, yeah, ever since I saw that movie in week 3, I had a tendency to do that and I don't do it anymore. And the aesthetic value of the film that we have in question was enough for him to be like, I'm that. Never again. You know, he made a strong enough vow to say, never again, I'm not entertaining these thoughts, because the limerent person is creating their own thoughts. You're not a victim of these thoughts. You are perpetuating these thoughts based on actually what's underneath is inner distress. Yeah. With all that in mind, it's highly unlikely that you're going to approach this girl and blow her away in this fit of sensual passion and seduction. Yeah, I've been there. It's a distressed desire that she come in and soothe you and save you. Yeah, limerence is one of the least seductive things that can befall a man.
Awesome. Once again, guys, we're on with Jordan Luke Collier, who's speaking to his new.
Who's sharing all the happy news today? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, type your questions into the Zoom stream onto YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Let's see here. This question came up a little while ago, and I want to get back to it now. Do you believe it's possible to have a soul-to-soul brackets quantum field conversation with the girl without seeing her in the flesh? And for example, ask her soul if you have a soul contract. Do you have any experience with that? Would this be part of the communication, or am I just nuts?
Yeah, maybe you're a little nuts, but I've been in this terrain and it's beautiful. Um, Obviously, if you put in limerent thoughts and so on, you can turn it into a bigger deal. And I'm a little skeptical sometimes about the twin flames, soulmates conversation. There was a beautiful graphic that I saw once, you know, one of these little artist drawings, and it says, "We must be twin flames. Um, we've met in a past life," and then the other person is saying, "Yeah, that's called our childhood." So often there's something, rather than being these amazing soul contract lovers, maybe you just had really similar traumas that bring you together with a particular intensity. So I want to take the fizz out of some of this over spiritualization by looking at psychologically what might be there in these really heavy attractions. And I think that's healthy to do, like pop the bubble a little bit and trying to look at really who the other person is and what's really going on. What happened in their past to create their patterns of attraction and relationship today? What happened in your past to create the patterns of your relationship and your attraction today? And then based on that, can we be a bit more real? In a way, two trauma bonded people do have a soul contract. It's both spirit, there is a spiritual element to it, but usually it's a lot more psychological. Again, I have been in ecstasy with a twin flame belief, but it didn't amount to anything in my real life, like a relationship that I can build and bank on. However, you're not really asking that question. You're asking something else. About yeah, I was on a Zoom training before and I met somebody and I thought, wow, every time this was, you know, 50 people came into a Zoom room and I saw their face and I felt they're in it and they shared a few words and I was like, God, this woman in the Zoom room is like outrageous. Um, and we met a few times in the Zoom room with the same group of people. Every time she came on, I had this big reaction, like kind of almost goosebumps, and my presence went really wide, and I was just alert. And part of polarity and subcommunication for me is when a woman brings a particular energy that goes into me and shows me that there's something there, it's on, as the guy in Swingers says. My attention goes really wide, and I become like the hunter example I gave earlier, like an archer. Boom, I know there's something here. And I could feel that with her. And every time we had a Zoom call, there was more intensity in my body. And then one day I checked my phone and she reached out to me and she was saying, Hi, Jordan. Ha ha ha. Every time we're on Zoom, I noticed that there is an energy that I feel drawn to. Ha ha. Would you like to get on a one-on-one call? Ha ha ha. Yeah, she giggled as she sent this message. It was quite cute. Um, yeah, this happened, and we didn't even see each other face to face. We were like one of 25 faces in a Zoom room, and the energy was strong. It was strong in me, and it was strong enough in her to have her reach out and contact me. So yeah, and I've met women in very brief ways, you know, and later on we've said, yeah, I had a dream about you last night, and we've spoken. Yeah, I also had dreams. I also had the same thoughts about you. Yeah. I I had a beautiful quote once, presence is non-locational. So you do not have to be in the flesh or in the same room for an extraordinary recognition to take place. And this is, you know, I jokingly put, almost semi-jokingly put in the run-up to this, we'll talk about quantum erotic entanglement. There is a moving particle somewhere in the world. There is another moving particle somewhere in the world. This one in North America, this one in Southeast Asia. They'd see each other on a Zoom call. And before you know it, this one is thinking about this one, and this one is thinking about this one. They have no context for each other. They never thought about each other. It happens. And I've heard stories of couples that get together, marriages that happen because of, yeah, there was this energy, and I was so curious. I just had to ask, who are you? What is this energy when I feel with you? And this is why, for me, subcommunication on the feeling level is the way to lead or guide attraction, is because when I feel so much real energy and curiosity for a woman, and then I write to her, hey, I saw you on this call and I'm curious, that message is full of so much charge and aliveness that she will feel that too. You see what I mean? I went out, you know, had a drink this morning, and this Amorati member shared with me, he said, I went to this big city lately. I was there for 2 weeks. I saw 100 attractive women, but I only saw three that made me feel something in my body. Is that normal? Because a lot of you guys are talking about, well, talk to everyone who's attractive. And I'm like, no, like, don't run around speaking to 100 women just because they're physically attractive. That's an insane loss of resources. I mean, if you're in your early 20s and you know you that's your life, sure, go ahead. But as soon as you start getting on in years, you've got a few things to do, a sense of purpose, sense of where you need to be. Feeling that deep sense of I really am curious. I really need to know what this vibration is that I feel when this woman is around. That is the thing that guides our approaches. Because I mean, a quality man just does not have time to speak to every single woman. She has to create a remarkable impression to be worthy of being. approached. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, let's guys, if you're looking for more clarity, please drop a line in the comments. Jordan, for guys who perhaps aren't so familiar with Ars Amorata lingo, what is subcommunication? How does it look? Obviously, it's subtle, but it is perceptible. How does it look? How does it play out? Is it unsaid words, tonality, choice of words?
Mm, yeah. So let's say that there is the communication that we can all see and hear and agree on that happens over the table. So the words I'm saying now are communicated. And also you can see there's a hand gesture. I'm pointing at my mouth coming out. That's communicated. These things are clear. We can all see them, hear them, as long as you've got half an eye open and an ear that's registering. This is fact. But then deeper than this, there are other levels of communication happening. You might choose to read into the color of my shirt or the fact that I'm wearing a hat or, why is there a Picasso behind me? There's a communication in all of this stuff. And if you listen to the timbre, the texture of my own voice, you might be able to feel emotionally how I am today or how I've been. Have I slept enough or am I dying to go to bed? You might even be able to feel if my woman is here with me or if I'm alone. So you go from the concrete, which is obvious, and you can tune into more and more subtle things. So, and if it's subcommunication, it's stuff that for most people sneaks underneath the radar. They don't pay attention to it with the conscious mind, and yet it's there. So, one thing when talking to a woman, let's say she feels a shock of interest for you, one thing that might happen is her pupils dilate slightly and more blood flows to her cheeks. Women put on rouge or blusher as a way to imitate the rosy cheeks, which is attractive, which makes a woman look like she's responding with the movement of blood and energy to men. So if you notice a woman actually blush, wow, I can actually see the hormonal emotional reaction that my own presence has caused in her. Oh, wow, I take enormous delight in that. And when the eyes flicker. And then one of the things we talked a lot about in the course is um, the way that our ego, the way that our embodied ego, the muscular contractions kind of keep up our social face. That's trying to communicate something to the world. I'm cool, I'm unaffected. Where you want to look is actually at fingers and toes, because the ego's grip over the body doesn't really extend to the fingers. So if you want to see if energy is flowing in a woman, just see what her fingers are doing. And often she'll hold herself quite stiff, but there'll be a dancing or a scratching or an unconscious kind of playing with herself. And then I can tell that energy's flowing. Her whole body might not be open and given, but these are little clues. So I'm I want to be able to read the movement of energy through another person's body. And that's available to the sight, but most people have not yet developed that kind of vision. But once you decide that you want to develop that kind of vision, I want to be able to read energy in another person's body. I want to know when they're masking it or faking it or projecting something. I want to know when they're loose and authentic. If you make that choice, you can start to bring out your own kind of vocabulary of clues and knowing that for yourself.
So Jordan, when Zan says he only goes where he's invited, is that his invitation? Is it subcommunicated? Do
Yeah,
you think?
yeah.
Yeah.
So one question you can ask is this woman open or is she closed? That's a little bit of a strange question for a lot of men. How do I know if she's open or open like a door or closed like a door? Well, that's a very concrete metaphor. So what I'm talking about here is subtle, but you should notice if her energy is a little bit open or is a little bit closed. And what women will do in a social situation, let's say there's two women at a bar and they're curious to meet new people. They don't want to meet everyone, but they want to go out and meet the right people. And say you're lingering in the vicinity, Anthony, you and I are having a drink, and there's two women over the bar having a drink. What will happen is, if the women like my presence, they will turn their shoulder 5 degrees more open, almost like a flower when the sun comes up. It just opens a little bit more and turns towards the sun, subtly. It's not going to do it fully. She's not going to go, I mean, unless she's, you know, one of these bars where there's a lot of escorts and so on, she might turn her full body. Hey, come and talk to me. Most women will open like a 3% or a 5%. And that just shows me that there is a 5% wider opening that I can come into. But if there's two men and the presence is unattractive, they're kind of leering, they don't have the right feeling about them, then her body language will close up 3 to 5%. If the men are really unconscious and self-centered, her body might turn in entirely so that there is zero possibility. But also, women don't want to close, she probably doesn't want to close entirely unless she has to. So you'll just see a subtle signal. And it's amazing, let's say you have someone like Zan or some very charismatic or present man walks into a bar, all of the roses in the field will subtly turn towards the sun and open a little bit more. It's not obvious to the eyes of most men, but it's subtle enough to make the difference. And then if I'm thinking, wow, I'm only going to go where I'm invited, I see where there's a lot of invitations around me. But the degrees of difference are a lot. But I've seen how one man can barge into the place and all of a sudden all the invitations close up and he's got no one he can go and talk to.
I'd say, well, it isn't obvious to most men. It is obvious to the trained eye.
To the
It
trained
takes
eye.
some trained eye, some
Yeah.
training to perceive this. Um, I'll ask you this question, and maybe you can't pinpoint an answer, but I'll ask it to you anyways. What do you think is the most important attractive quality in a man for women, and how can it be developed with the help of cinema?
Sorry, how can it be developed
With the help of cinema,
with the
cinema
help
work.
of cinema? All women have different values and different preferences. Um, but what comes to me now is a man who is absolutely fired up about the things that he loves in his life. So he's caught up by a sense of passion for something bigger than him. Seems to be the way. So a woman can fall in love. No, fall in love is a bit strong. Woman can want you and be yours because of your status or your power. But if the spirit or the soul of a man is truly alive and awake and throbbing and humming with a sense of passion for what he's living, this transmits something kinetic. A man who is alive, who has a fierce sense of direction, also an open heart because he's living aligned. Yeah, that's really powerful. Why cinema? I mean, for me, film gives me this. I'm on fire when I talk about films that I love or great art. They hit me in many different vectors, directions, and I feel inspired. My mind opens and makes connections. My heart opens and feels inspiration. Sometimes my guts or my loins are just filled with drive and energy as well. So film does that to me. That's why I love to talk about it and love to share it. And when you see worlds and characters that give you similar feelings, yeah, it's like the world is yours. I know over the last few years, a lot of men in that are close to me love the Dune movie, particularly Dune 2. Just the thing about being on this planet 10,000 years into the future and the great deserts and the scenes that they had. Wow, they just love being in the cinema. It was like a meditation. My head was blasted away. Yes, this freedom, this kind of science fiction future. I just love that. I want to be that. There is a huge weight of awe and wonder that falls upon his psyche that fills him up with energy. So that's a world that they love to belong to. It has characters that it has myths that they love to relate to. And it gives a man a real source of nourishment. For other men, it's different. They might like a different sort of movie. Um, yeah, there are other things that are popular, but images, the world, they stick with you, they provoke you. You fall in love with it. One character in a film, male or female, you fall in love with them or they represent something to you. You keep them forever as a reference. You might not have the dark masculine archetype around you in your life, but you see it in the movies. You can travel with that guy every single day, relate to him.
There's a question, Jordan, about being non-reactive in tense situations, which you could perhaps extrapolate into just that attractive sense of composure, right, and groundedness and centeredness. Um, how does your course speak to that, and perhaps help men who are looking to improve their sense of centeredness and groundedness?
If you're working on groundedness or centeredness, I'd pick an embodiment meditation to start working that already. So you can understand what these concepts mean actually in your own body. Um, so there are different definitions of grounded or centered, which you can look into. What knocks a man out of his groundedness or what knocks a man out of his center? These are also interesting considerations because whatever triggers you will take you out of that state that you would like to be in. So then you want to explore those things. How do you lose it? And yeah, the plots of film are going to test you when you see yourself or see the characters being put through life situations and emotions that are evocative of your worst fears. Can you actually keep watching this? Do you pause the film and walk out of the room or, close down? So in a way, if you can take, I mean, we watch a couple of films that are surprising and dark and shocking. If you can stay watching the films and keep breathing and just be like, yeah, I accept this. This happens in the human race, and people I know go through things like this, and I recognize these parts of me. You've got the fortitude to stick with emotionally challenging films. It's a weight training for being with these qualities in life. And most people, if you notice, the range of expression in the films that they watch, the music they listen to, the art that they consume is very thin. They just go for top 40. They just go for the newest thing that is showing in all the cinemas. But what real boundary pushing art is looking to do is to provide you with feelings and questions and themes that are on the edge of what you're able to accept. So just you watching a boundary pushing film is going to test how open are you really, how non-reactive, or do you react? And that's partly I like Sanctuary. It's not the best film ever. However, a lot of men were really triggered by watching Sanctuary. And some of the men that we spoke to on the call were like, I was triggered by watching Sanctuary because it reminded me of my last relationship, and that's something I don't want to repeat. Well, can you watch the film and stay open, feel a sense of compassion, understanding? Yeah, I could. And it was brutal. But I'm glad because even though it stung, I feel like I'm less defensive now. I'm becoming more curious about these feelings and about these qualities of women and about this quality of myself. I'm becoming more accepting. So if you participate really richly in cinema, like we were inviting you to, you can get a lot of self-acceptance if you're willing to work it.
Really well said, Jordan. Really well said. Um, let's yeah, let's get guys final questions in. We're gonna wrap this live stream up shortly. I see one here. There's a bit of pushback on something you said earlier about communication. Is there a danger of remaining too passive if you always rely on a woman's signals to approach?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I always rely on a woman's signals. I think if you, as the man, feel a very strong impulse to go and speak to her, then by all means go and do that. she might not have sent you any invitation at all. But if you're vibrating with something urgent and powerful in your body, go and do it. Because once you do make that approach, you will be vibrating with a sense of truth, and she will feel that your truth is there. If you are just an approach monkey and you just go out and do the numbers, and there's no vibration in your body, and there's also no signal in what she's shown you, it's for me, it's a graceless mess, and it doesn't have anything to do with seduction. I mean, sure, disturb her day and throw out some random theatrics that you're trying to say, or give a compliment that you don't really feel and mean. Sure, go and go and do that. But if you're looking for meaning and authenticity, that's not how I see it.
Jordan, where can guys find more info on your course and access it?
Let's put the link in the comments
We'll do that.
so you can have a look through it. Arsamorata.com/mastery. It's up on the website. You can have a look through the different themes that we propose, our way of working. Everything is broken down there. And the films we keep a secret. They're all on the inside. And once you log in, you can work through the masterclass and find them. But I hint at the themes, so you have a clear idea of the themes that we're going to tackle. And yeah, you can look through that page now. It's open. You can sign up today. And when you sign up, you get access to the full season one. So we spent this summer going through the full list. There's 8 themes. We actually throw in 9 movies over those 8 weeks. You can go through them all, and that's available for you to do at your own time and pace. It's on demand, the course. And then later this year, we're going to open up a season 2 as well. So if you sign up for the masterclass today, you will catch up on all the season 1 in time, so that in November, when we launch the season 2, you can be part of that live group as well.
Yeah,
How
guys.
would how would you
So
how would you see it, Anthony? Is there something I've missed out on saying that was crucial to you as a student?
the your answer to the question about non-reaction. So a number of these films really pushed the edge of what I thought was uh, acceptable, or even what I thought happened in society. Um, I remember one of the films reminded me of a time when I had a night out and saw some things in my hometown that I didn't quite knew happened in my hometown. Um, and it was a sort of initiation of sorts into a mature, um, somewhat more experienced, more weathered man. Um, and I'd say you don't necessarily have to experience darkness or pain in your own, you know, uh, film of a life. You can see it happen to someone else and take on that knowledge, right, and take on that learning yourself. And that's film is one form of which you can take on these learnings without having to go through the actual experience yourself. Of
Yeah,
course, there is beauty in experiencing these things, for sure there is. And on the flip side, I'd say seeing things play out on screen, you're given a primer, you're given a background on how you can act in these situations, right? Um, Jordan, I told you a story about how I was caught in somewhat of a love triangle with another guy and a girl, and I don't believe that I would have been able to handle that situation with the grace that I did, and have it lead to uh, the conclusion that I did had I not seen that one film in the course where that exact uh, dynamic was played out, you know?
mhm.
So it really provides some real relevant and practical value to any man who's looking for um, uh, to kind of enter that more subtle realm when it comes to seduction and dating and relationships. Yeah.
It's great that you say that. It reminds me of how stories are encoded into cultures, particularly ancient cultures, for transmission. And you learn the wisdom of the elders by listening to their stories. And the films are the stories of today. We've lost the tradition of being in a church or a temple with each other, let alone sitting around the fire. But we can sit around a TV, or we can go to the cinema and see the world's stories played out for all of us. And that's how we learn. One of the films in the course, I mean, I think I've answered the questions as you've shared them one by one. I've loved some of the questions shared tonight. I think I've done a disservice to just how many years I've been in love with some of these films and the passion behind why I built this and why I want to share them. There's a couple of films in the course that I saw in my early 20s, and they're non-English films, foreign films that tackle themes that the English would never dare talk about. Passion, romance, the erotic, the obsessional. It took films from, let's say, Spain, France, who are much more adventurous at looking into the erotic and into love and into the dark sides of these things. Just staying within my small English culture, everything was a romantic comedy. And I got to see the dark sides of myself on the screen. And these were films that I couldn't figure out for 10 or 15 years. And I revisited them later on as an adult with more psychological perspective. And I'm like, no wonder this is why I felt so much watching this. It was my life, my potential life that I was moving towards. And this film helped divert me. Um, and there's films where we tackle love, like the process of falling in love, and also the process of heartbreak and what you do with that heartbreak after. And sometimes when things are really rocky with my girlfriend, I can remember back to some of these films and watch them, and the films will break my heart in a way that makes me improve the relationship again. It's like medicine, right? I do not want to play out that fate of that protagonist who I relate to so much. Thank God I have this inside me as a direction of where not to go, because now it tells me where I should remember to go instead. Nothing like a good tragedy.
I think it'd be good, Jordan, to let guys know how important cinema is to you and how you see your own life's work involving cinema. You mentioned it today at the conference. For those of you who follow you who weren't there, could you drop a bit of a spoiler in terms of how you want to work with cinema going forward in your own pursuit of sort of transformational influencing culture?
I love, I mean, this period of time, we're using film as a learning aid, as a conversation starter, and as a trigger point, and as a mirror. And to do that, I'm breaking down films with more and more precision to understand how the art and the craft, creating a character journey, a dramatic arc, of enrapturing a viewer and taking them into this other world. Um, Ultimately, I want to create a new paradigm, or be one of the people participating in a new paradigm of literature and film. When I go into a bookstore these days, there's not really much for me. And the cinema is a bit better, but even still, there's maybe 5 films a year, 10 if I'm generous, that have really got something essential that I need to see. Um, and for the men that resonate with me, what do we read and what do we watch? I think particularly in Hollywood and the West, really healthy, virile male sexuality that is also vulnerable and connected is hardly ever demonstrated. You've got all these John Wayne types, which are cool and everything. Um, but they're in that old paradigm of, the man's way and a woman is second fiddle and so on. And you have more recently the deconstructed male, or the male as buffoon character. But I don't see films that show incredible, powerful intimacy often I see snippets, but not a norm. And I'm not seeing multi-layered, multi-textured expressions of a new wave of masculinity. Femininity sometimes. Femininity, I think female directors at the moment are bringing something beautiful and new. There's more exploration in literature, but for kind of the straight, beauty-loving male, we have a real poverty of images of who we can become in the world. And I see this because I speak to so many men, not just kind of my age and older, but younger men. Who can I grow up and become? Who are your heroes? Who who is there as an image of potential for you? There is a dearth of that, a void of that. I don't know if you agree. Um,
Well, I'll tell you this, before I started, before I deepened my involvement with Amorata, I didn't like film very much at all because I found it a waste of time. 2 hours to watch a movie, like, rather do something else. But you helped me see not only the transformational possibility of film watching, but just um, you helped expose me to a genre of film that I didn't explore before. A lot of older stuff. I think that's a testament to how things have changed over the last, as you said, 30 or so years. Um, yeah, uh, I see yeah, my interest in cinema has taken off, and I see a lot of value in being both a consumer and perhaps even someone, myself to influence, uh, that art form in some way at some point.
hmm,
My mom took me to acting auditions when I was a kid, and I didn't make the grade at the time. But I think now, perhaps a more integrated man, I might have another go at it at some point. I think
oh, beautiful.
you know, uh, do that, even perhaps an improv, more amateur form of acting would be great.
We all
Thank
we
you,
all have a
Jordan.
we all have a sense in
Please.
culture that great literature is going to change our lives. You know, I've got Moby Dick over there I'm traveling with, and you could read a Dostoevsky or a Tolstoy, um, Goethe, Proust, these Shakespeare, these people are you know, it's going to take me weeks to read Moby Dick, or you can watch The Godfather in 3 hours and just be stunned by the grandness, the epicness of the human drama in 3 hours. You know,
Yeah.
it's a light. It's the cinema is a great democratization of art. You don't have to travel to the Louvre or the, Sistine Chapel or anything like this to behold some of the greatest things,
Mm,
cultural relics in all of humanity. You can download it, you can stream it tonight, stick it on your TV, and be blown away. And some of the greatest films that I've seen, I've had the aesthetic impact of like watching this film. When I watched Seven Samurai for the first time from Kurosawa. This is a samurai film from 1954, black and white, 3.5 hours long. And I was watching this film and I was like, this is so compelling. Watching this movie is got to be as good as visiting the pyramids of Giza. And if aliens came down from space and they were like, Jordan, give us 10 things we should see or do to understand humanity. I'm like, watch Seven Samurai. Like this as an aesthetic thing. Wow. It was just incredible. And to feel that size and grandeur and wonder in my living room, on a Friday night when I had nothing to do is astonishing. So yeah, this is why I believe in cinema. I say it more succinctly now. It's a great democratization of art. And no matter how humble you might think you are with art, cinema is a fast way to understand complex truths and to nuance yourself as an instrument of perception as a man. The journey is just tremendous. I love literature as well. It just takes so long to read books. They're deeper in a way, but with cinema, you can watch the canon, a few months and you are.
yeah, I think a lot of guys, especially in our space, might think, might discount film or TV. I said somehow not, it's not the pure text. But I mean, technology evolves. We have screens, we live in the age of history in which these things are available now for the first time ever. And let's not discount that, you know? Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Jordan. And thanks to everyone who sent their questions in on the live stream on Zoom, on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. The link to the movie masterclass has been posted. It's available
Beautiful.
now. Sign up online. And if anyone has any questions about this or any other of Jordan's work, you can reach Jordan at Jordan. How can I reach you? Let's start with your kind of information.
Jordan@amorata.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you have any questions for me, ask them there. And once you're inside the masterclass, when you have questions about the films and the course and the different questions that I pose, something comes up on the process like, wow, that was difficult, or it brought up this memory, or I had a situation like that with a woman. What do I do? I'm in this now. Post them on the group feed and I answer them. So I give you mentoring as you go through this program so that it is useful for the here and now of your relationship life and your dating life. So yeah, get in touch. I'm around, and the masterclass is open. I'll see you there tomorrow.
Absolutely. And any question related to um, how else this course might benefit you in your own situation, hit me up as well. Anthony@osmorada.com. I'm available for any of your inquiries. I'll also post my calendar to these same channels. You can book a call with me there to discuss things further.
Beautiful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Anthony, for hosting
My
us.
pleasure.
And yeah, thank you everyone for listening and for your great questions.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you on the inside.